Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of Beat the Sheet, an Xbox Game Pass challenge. The only podcast aimed to complete every single one of the 497 titles that have been made available on Xbox Game Pass since the start of 2020. As always, I'm your host Andy Wood and I'm joined by my co-host Josh.
Well, hello there.
Hello. So, on this week's show, it's the return of gaming's biggest franchise as GTA 5 returns to Game Pass. We get into our Wargroove and abandon hope all ye who enter here. It's an Unravel double bill.
Oh God, that was a bad weekend. Oh no, I'm having horrible flashbacks and I've not even spoken about it yet. Oh man,
it had to happen, man. We were just, you just kept playing it. You just kept playing Unravel for no reason. So what else can we do but present that to the masses? Anyway, how's your week been this week, Josh? Other than Unravel, of course.
I mean, that made it inevitably terrible, but it's been okay. Other than that, I found my desperate struggle to buy as many PS Vita games as possible started to hit the real dregs of the software library now. I mean, I'm buying Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, a bad game by all accounts. I just bought Resistance Burning Skies, a game that everybody said sucked. I bought it now. I nearly bought Virtua Tennis 4, despite the fact it's like 10 years old. And who wants a 10-year-old tennis game? I mean, I'm sure it's great. The Virtua Tennis series is great. And it did remind me, it's the one sport. We said last week that all sports are represented on Game Pass. We completely fobbed off tennis, which has no representation. It's because
nobody makes good tennis games anymore. That's why we need Virtua Tennis back.
We need it back, actually. So maybe this is the plug we need. Sega, make a Virtua Tennis game and put it in Game Pass. I'd be all over. At least put Sega Superstars Tennis in Game Pass.
Why not?
That game was good, dude. That was a good game. Pretty playable. But how has your week been?
Yeah, my week's been okay. I've been on the PS3 side of the pillage Sony before it's too late bus this week. So I installed like a 1 terabyte hard drive in my PS3, which is actually surprisingly easy. I didn't realize how simple that was. You literally I've got the slim PS3, which is the model in the middle of the 3 they released, and you just unscrew one screw and then the hard drive comes out and you pop a new one in. Super easy. So that's really good. But I haven't even done any shopping for new games yet because I've just been installing everything I already own. And I found that because they've not even said that the ability to download games is going away yet. You know, it's just the store that's disappearing. But I'm preparing in advance. I'm going full doomsday prepper for the fact that you might not be able to download stuff at some point. But I found that there's nothing I won't download if I own it. So it's just got stupid now. I'm wasting 14 gigabytes of this hard drive on Pro Evolution Soccer 14 that I could just buy for 1 pence on disc. And for some reason I own Pumped BMX Plus on there, which is a game that was in Game Pass before we started this show and is one of our lowest reviewed games on the sheet because we hate it. And yet I've still downloaded it for no reason. It has to be on there. So yeah, my PS3's been working night and day now for about 4 days, just trying to install everything because games take a long time to install on that console. I installed Uncharted 1 last night and it took about 3.5 hours. So yeah, PS3 just isn't getting a rest at the moment. It's just working hard. But yeah, so that's been interesting. I'm hoping to wrap that up soon. And then also this week, we've had there's a really cool initiative going on with our podcast host provider, which is Captivate. They have this thing going with Podchaser, which is this place where you can review podcasts and find new shows. It's a pretty good website. And they're basically doing a thing where any Captivate podcast that gets a review on Podchaser, they're just giving money to charity basically for nothing. So anyone who reviews our show in the next few weeks, it's up until the end of April. If they do that and we comment on it, then people just give money to Meals on Wheels, which is a charity in the US that helps with hunger and isolation for seniors. So that's really cool. You know, we don't often shill too much for reviews here, but this is really cool because obviously it's just, you write a review and money goes to charity. So that's really good. I will pop a link to our Podchaser page in the show notes. So if anyone has a spare minute, if you could do that, that'd be fantastic. And, it's all going to help a good cause. So really good.
Fantastic initiative there. But more importantly, we have 2 new additions to the Xbox Game Pass service this week, and they are Grand Theft Auto 5 and Zombie Army 4 Dead War. Fantastic little bit of rhyming scheme there. Big fan of that. Okay, so just the 2 games, but certainly one of these is a titan of the industry, Grand Theft Auto 5. I think we've all played Grand Theft Auto 5 by this point, but even if just to have that access to that sweet GTA Online this is a pretty cool reintroduction to Game Pass because it has been in the service before.
Yeah. I mean, GTA 5 only left back in May last year, so it's been gone for 11 months. It got replaced immediately by Red Dead Redemption 2 that time, but then that only stuck around for like a few months, which was quite painful for me since I had to rush through it. But yeah, GTA 5 is always a good thing to have in the service. I think, it's sold so many units at this point. I think it's edging towards 140 million sold now. So they probably don't need more sales anyway. So anyone who hasn't bought it at this point probably isn't going to. So you might as well put it on Game Pass, let more people play it. And obviously, I mean, that GTA Online ecosystem is where all the money is anyway now. They're making a killing off people playing that and buying whatever it is. I think you can buy like bank cards on the Xbox store, which give you in-game GTA money. I assume they're doing pretty well off that. So I don't know. I think this might actually stick around long term this time in Game Pass. I think, they've had it in before, but I think this time with GTA Online being so big now, they'll probably just leave it in to just print money via that, really.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably just going to keep it there to drum up interest for the 700th remaster of the game for next generation consoles. So, maybe that's the long-term plan to convince us we need a high defer version of GTA 5. But Zombie Army 4 is a cool one as well. That was announced as a PS Plus subscriber game, and I was quite excited about the fact it was. And so instantly coming into Game Pass as well is pretty cool. It gives me an excuse to play the damn thing rather than just download it and just never actually touch it. So yeah, 2 decent games here. Let's do some impressions on Zombie Army 4 first. We've not beat this game. It's a surprisingly lengthy campaign. I thought this was going to be significantly shorter, but there's quite a bit of content here. And I guess it's fair to describe this as Left 4 Dead. It's just Left 4 Dead, isn't it? It's basically Left 4 Dead.
Pretty much.
There's no cross here.
No, I mean it's pretty much Left 4 Dead. Obviously, it's third person, which is slightly different. But most of the shooting, like whenever you're using a scope, immediately becomes first person anyway. So it's not really that different. It's got a bit of kind of pedigree from because this is the developers who make the Sniper Elite games. So you can tell they want you using like sniper rifles and stuff, and like on the higher difficulties, it takes into account like gravity on the shots, and I think even wind if you go on the extreme difficulty, which, no thanks. If I've got an army of zombies coming at me, I don't need to calculate for wind. Thank you very much. But I mean, that comes with some pretty good shooting mechanics. This is a studio who are so solely focused on basically sniper rifles that the guns feel pretty good to use. There's some good sounds to them. The bullets feel impactful. You're kind of knocking off zombie heads all the time. So it brings some good stuff to the table. It's not. We're not talking Left 4 Dead caliber here. It would be ridiculous to suggest we are. It's not that good. But I think if you've got a few friends together, you can have a lot of fun in this game.
Yeah, it's a kind of enjoyable little experience. It's kind of arcadey, isn't it? It's not too serious. Yeah. You're chasing high scores. You're trying to rack up as many points as humanly possible. There's combo chains to killing zombies with a fairly reasonable cooldown meter, which I like. You are able to take a few seconds before killing something else, and your combo continues. Like that a lot. And you can really, when you're doing to get a rhythm with it, and you're snapping off people, get too close with a shotgun, and then picking off some further away with a sniper rifle, lobbing a grenade. There's loads of fun different weapons you can pick up, flamethrowers, giant messed up shotguns, which basically take out 7 people at once, electrical grenades. There's quite a lot of cool stuff going on here to actually kind of pad out the core weapon supply. And it's kind of a decent time. But as you mentioned, this feels very co-op focused. The whole thing, even the dialogue doesn't change to except the fact you are on your own. Yeah. A lot of the time your character will just go, oh yeah, we only just got out of that one. I'm like, who is this person? Are they schizophrenic? Why are they talking as if there's more than one of them? But, this was meant to be played with more than one person. It's perfectly enjoyable as a solo experience from what I've played of it. It's not too difficult. I think it's balanced enough. I'm only playing at medium difficulty. I imagine if you cranked it up, it would get significantly harder. But yeah, I think it's a decent little title in here. I think it's got some pulpy fun to it, to say the least.
Yeah, it's very pulpy, very kind of very silly. I mean, some of the locales you go to, even from the early chapters, are pretty crazy. You'll be on like crashed trains, and then you're on a boat going through Venice. You go to a zoo. It's all just kind of crazy stuff like that. And they do ridiculous stuff with zombies in this game as well. This isn't just your typical, the dead have risen. Now you're going to shoot some zombies. These are these are actual Nazi zombies. And then even at the point I'm at, which is only through about a quarter of the missions, there's tanks now that are actual zombies. So like the tanks are just full of guts and like they've come alive as zombies. There's zombie planes in the sky. It's, it's obviously, it knows it's a stupid game, and I kind of appreciate it for that. It's not trying to be hyper serious. So yeah, it's good fun. I just think that my only real issue with this game is that I hit a wall of it very quickly playing in single player. Like I was having fun at first because the mechanics are solid, and like I said, these locations are quite funny and it's all pretty cool. But then because you kind of only use a set group of weapons, really. You pick a rifle and a secondary weapon to take into the level, and you largely stick with those. So there's only so many hours of shooting zombies with those two guns that I've chose to bring with me that I can do before I'm a little bit fed up with it. Whereas I think if you brought friends in to play the game with you, it would totally open it up and you'd have a lot more fun. But I think as a single player gamer on this one, you're going to want to maybe just play a bit at a time, do one chapter and then pick it up in a week's time and do another one. This isn't one to try and do the whole 15-hour campaign in like 1 or 2 sittings. It's just going to not be a good time.
No, I think it is very much a pick up and play, do it in good little chunks kind of experience. It's nicely broken into like you get each campaign in a different location, and each campaign will have 3 or 4 different checkpoints. So you can just stop and go, okay, that's enough for me today. I'll pick it up later. I appreciate that. I like that. As you mentioned, the lack of partners for us has kind of impacted it in the sense that there's a lot of weird environmental stuff around here. You'll have like mounted turrets and signposts which can spin electricity or lure people in to eventually blow them up. And there's only so much of that you can do whilst also dealing with the horde. If you had 2 or 3 people, you could actually have people move onto turrets and mow people down and make more use of the environmental hazards in this game. I noticed one which was attached to a shark, which could, you spin it, it would give the shark a jolt of life and it'd eat a zombie. And that was kind of cool, but I could barely use it because I'm too busy dealing with the threat immediately coming to me. So it's very much, the maps are designed around co-op play. The whole experience is. So although it works as a single player game, I don't think it's unplayable or anything like that. It's still perfectly enjoyable. This was quite clearly made with co-op in mind. And if you are able to gather a couple of friends together to play this online, I think you'll have 10 times as much fun as you will as a single player gamer. This is definitely one to try and gather friends for if you are able to, because if you do, the mechanics are good here. The guns, as you say, have a decent heft to them. There's punch and pow to each one that comes. The sniper rifles are great. I like the fact that you sometimes get this slow-mo as you do in the Sniper Elite games where you can see the bullet crack through skulls or blow up rib cages or lungs and guts get punctured. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. It's not great when it happens time after time. I had moments where I had that happen every single shot seemingly. I was like, bloody hell, can you stop doing it so I can get back to murdering? But when it's done rarely enough, it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. It's a nice little visual treat. And the enemy variety is good. So there's a lot to enjoy here. It plays very well. It's just perhaps so patently not a single player game.
Yeah, I think that's it, right? I think, if I was suggesting a game to a player playing on their own, I would say, give this a try. But maybe just like we said earlier, a level at a time would probably be the limit. Whereas you bring a group in, you can probably smash out a good few hours in this and have a good time. I would actually say, while we're kind of on the topic of games that are just cloning Left 4 Dead and are in Game Pass, there's also World War Z in Game Pass, which is another 4-player game where you do exactly this. You go through levels in different locations, and you have to survive and get to the end. So that game is maybe a little more friendly to the single player because it does bring in AI teammates if you don't have real players, which does help. I mean, the AI sucks in that game, but just having them there does help. They'll save you from difficult situations, or they'll at least be shooting someone so you can get on like a gun turret or something without it all going wrong. So yeah, for a single player looking for a game like this, I would probably lean towards World War Z from what I've seen so far. But if you've got a group, I think this is the one. I think you'd have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like it. I like the customization options. You can make your characters look as ridiculous as possible. Mine's got a giant sun hat with flowers. That's kind of funny. That amused me, if nothing else. All the characters do have their own unique skills and abilities and positives and negatives. So, in a co-op setting, you'll be able to cover each other's weaknesses and, play to each other's strengths in a better way. In single player, again, you're kind of just hampered by your weaknesses. My character I played as had a terrible melee attack, so I can't melee anybody. So in a co-op environment, that's not a problem because other people would cover that weakness. So it's a bit of another frustration for single player. But there's giant RPG like, skill upgrades for the guns. You can add crazy stuff to things like electrical charges to your shotguns so that zombies get electrocuted and their heads literally blow up via the static. That's kind of cool to see. That's fun. My sniper rifle blows people up. It has an explosive charge in it, which is also kind of cool. There's stuff here. There's perks for your character where you can have a second chance if you kill somebody when you're down. Say like the Borderlands mechanic, which does a similar thing. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot of customization options for the person you're playing as. And again, if you're in a co-op scenario, as you're all building up your characters and covering each other's weaknesses, that would be fantastic. In a single player, it's fine and it's fun, but it's just lacking that little something for me to keep me engaged beyond a chapter at a time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is one I'm going to be shelving for now. And, maybe if I get an opportunity to actually play in multiplayer, maybe we can get together at some point and hammer this one out. That would be my chosen way to play it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a cool story in its own little way. I kind of like the idea. The whole thing is a follow-on from 3 other games worth of zombie army lore. I think they're all hidden within Sniper Elite more than their own separate releases, but this one is the big full-fledged game. And yeah, it's all about Hitler's zombie army. He was losing the war, so he raised the dead, because of course he did. He's Hitler. He'd totally do that. I could buy that, and he died, but the zombies continue on irrespective. And it's fun enough. It's grindhouse pulp. That's what it is. The screen has a grindhouse filter on it where there's a crackle to everything. All the locations remind me of the kind of places you'd go in a House of the Dead game. A lot of this does feel very House of the Dead to me, which is great. I love that franchise. So there's a lot to like here, and I do quite enjoy it. It's just lacking a little bit in the solo experience for me. But I think it's definitely worth picking up if you're happy to just do it chunk by chunk. If you're just happy to have it sitting on your hard drive and you just drop in to do it whenever you've got a spare 30 minutes, I think it's pretty good for that. And if you want to have a co-op game to enjoy with your buddies, I think this should be right up on the top of the list. I think this is a good co-op title.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think, that's the best way to play it. But as you said, just chip away at it in your own if you want to as well.
Okay, let's park our zombie fest and move on to the zombie that is Grand Theft Auto 5, because whenever you think it's dead, it comes back to life. Here it is again, once more in Game Pass. I mean, what do you say about a game like GTA 5? It's a giant title. Everybody by this point knows the Grand Theft Auto series name. This came out, must have been about 7 or 8 years ago now at this point. You can fact check this for me, but it's very, very long ago. And yet it still remains a thoroughly next-gen game. It still feels as fresh as it did whenever it launched. I can see you desperately trying to tell me it. When did it launch?
Well, right. So yeah, GTA 5 initially came out in September 2013. So that is a 7.5-year-old game now. And I agree with you. I mean, it's obviously had an upgrade to for the Xbox One and the PS4, and it's getting another upgrade for the PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles. But even without that update, this game still feels pretty damn modern. I mean, realistically, nobody's made a more elaborate open world than the worlds that Rockstar make still. I can't think of a game outside of, you could argue Red Dead Redemption 2 maybe, which is still Rockstar, but outside of that, I can't think of another open world game that is as densely packed as Grand Theft Auto 5 is. It's just ridiculous that this game is from 2013.
It's a miracle of programming, isn't it? Let's be honest. It is a densely packed world, just full to the brim with weird characters and interesting things to see. People are still discovering mad things in GTA 5 to this day. You can go on any YouTube channel and somebody's posting about some freaky nonsense that just nobody had found up until this point. I mean, it's a fantastic open world game. It's what I want open world games to be, and it can only really be done on Rockstar's kind of budget, or if you scale everything back to something like a Yakuza, at least in my opinion. And yeah, it's kind of hard for us to review this game, partly because I played it so long ago. I played GTA 5 pretty much on launch, and I loved it back then. I still like it now, even though I find a weird thing with Grand Theft Auto games where I don't necessarily love them. Yeah, I kind of had this begrudging respect for them, which kind of means that I never have a bad time with it. Even when I'm thinking, maybe I'm a little bit sick of driving to location and shooting thugs. It still has so much charm and AAA polish to it that you can kind of overlook those faults.
Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, my experience with the GTA series is quite a weird one, really, because I've definitely played the vast majority of them, but I don't tend to stick with them very long. GTA 5, I absolutely did. I bought this when it came out because, I mean, the hype was unbelievable. You know, it felt like you had to buy GTA 5. There was no choice. And yeah, I picked it up and I enjoyed it and I played the whole game. And I'm similar to you in that I never outright look at GTA as a series and think I adore that series. I can't wait for the next one. But you can't play GTA 5 and come out of it thinking it's anything less than amazing. I mean, the just the again, the world, the locations, the amount you can actually do in this world, you know, the kind of ambitious side of it where they decide to just make three main characters and kind of interweave their stories and you can play them in realistically kind of any order. You know, you can jump to different characters and proceed with their story and then move to one of the others. That's pretty great. It's just, I mean, and then you add GTA Online onto that as well. You know, they've now just got this entire online universe with all kinds of mental stuff in it, like flying cars and secret bases and things like that. It's the scale of it is just unmatched, and you have to respect that even if you're not a standard fan of the series. I mean, my actual experience with the GTA series is quite similar to your experience with Halo so far. In that, I think the GTAs I've completed are the first ever one, which was like a top-down, super simple game, and then GTA Chinatown Wars on the Nintendo DS, and then this one. So like, I just haven't done all of the big ones in the middle that everyone loves. But yeah, GTA 5 is just a masterpiece, really.
Yeah, it's a big, massive game. I've played all the GTA games bar the first two, and I've enjoyed them all. I've completed them all. They're always engaging enough to keep me going. Rockstar has clearly moved away from the GTA 3 Vice City San Andreas days where they were more sandboxes of carnage than they necessarily were, you know, deep, in-depth, rich game worlds, even though they were that as well. But I think they kind of knew what their audience wanted and they kind of played up to it. GTA 4 famously took a big step away from that, and with its tanky cars and social activities and people you just couldn't get rid of no matter what you tried. God damn,
Yeah.
like friendships in real life. And then you have GTA 5, which is a bit of a drawback to a slightly more sandbox destruction kind of feel, partly due to the way that they did introduce those three playable protagonists. As you mentioned at the top, you play as Michael, Trevor, and Franklin. And Michael and Franklin kind of have the traditional GTA story of, you know, trying to deal with mob bosses and trying to get their way to the top or keep hold of what they've got and all that sort of GTA mob good stuff. But Trevor is quite clearly a character who was brought in solely for carnage alone.
Yeah.
Anytime you like even switch to the guy, because you can switch between each character, as you said, just by pressing the button pretty much, he'll be in some ridiculous situation. He'll have no clothes on and be outside of a strip bar. He'll be face down in the desert. There's always some crazy situation you come to that character in. And if you want that destruction, you know you just need to press that button and he's probably going to be doing something stupid. And I like that. I like how they integrated a lot of the old GTA into that character whilst keeping the more modern, you know, main big story, social themes kind of GTA locked into those two other characters. And I think it works pretty well on the whole. I think it's a good direction for the franchise. And GTA 6 will one day come out, God knows when. When it does, when they're finished remastering GTA 5 for the 700th time, probably.
Yeah.
But I hope they kind of continue with this because I like the three playable characters in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's like you said, it's a really great balance between, you know, the destruction, but also trying to tell a bit more of a, I mean, I was going to, yeah, like it's a mature story, but also GTA is always a parody of the world. You know, it's great at that too. But yeah, I mean, just to highlight as well that when you were saying there about how you can change to Trevor and he's doing something like he's always doing something crazy, like that system really deserves to be highlighted because like the idea of putting that in the game is a pretty huge undertaking. You know, this idea that you can press on either of the three characters and they'll be doing a natural thing at that point in time in the world that makes sense. You know, like they'll be doing something that character would have been doing at that time if you weren't playing as them. Like that's crazy. And in like all of my time playing GTA 5, I don't remember those cycling around like all the time. You know, I don't switch to Trevor and see that he's in the same place he was like when I played last week. You know, they had so many different situations that you could jump into the characters in, and it just adds a ton of life to the world. You know, it's again, it's something only Rockstar can do because they have infinite money and they can realistically release the game whenever they feel it's ready because there's no pressure on them to get out the door. So, you know, they can spend time putting these insane levels of detail in that other companies just can't afford. And, you know, it's great that it exists for you know, for gamers. It's really cool to see it.
Yeah, it's just fantastic what they managed to do with it. Gameplay-wise, it all plays as you'd expect. The cars handle significantly better than Force did. They're much more fun to drive. You've got all the array of helicopters and planes and motorbikes and RC planes, like every weird contraption, boats. No matter what, you can probably get one of them and drive around or fly around in it. It's very satisfying to do. The shooting, still not exactly the most engaging combat system you'll ever play in a video game, but it works, and it works well enough. And all the characters have like a special meter they fill up to do crazy things once you get to that point, and it's fun for that. No one's playing a GTA game for radically incredible game design, even if the mission design is pretty good. It varies on its theme enough to never get too repetitive, even if at its very core you're doing very similar things. They managed to throw in enough weird characters and weird situations and weird little tangents and ideas to vary themselves enough from what has come before. And I appreciate that. GTA, it's one of those games where if you've not played it, how? And if you have played it, surely by now you know whether you wish to or not. It's not changed too much from that GTA 3 formula about 20 years ago now. It's still doing that, and it does it damn well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the thing with GTA. It's always been a series that's primarily about, jumping into the game world and then kind of seeing what takes your fancy. This isn't a game where you're going to turn it on and think, right, let's spend 10 hours just mainlining story missions. It's more a game where you're going to turn it on, maybe you'll switch to Michael, see what he's up to, and then you'll just go and do whatever you feel like doing. You'll steal a nice car, maybe you'll just go and play like a bit of golf or tennis or something like that, because of course you can in GTA. Maybe you just want to listen to the fantastic radio stations, because GTA always has about 200 hours of fantastic radio content in it. It's a game to just jump into and just spend time in, frankly, more than anything. And they've always been really good at doing that. But then as the game and as generations go forward and we have more kind of power in these consoles, they just keep blowing the scale of that up to an insane level that other studios just can't match.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you was to play this, if you have not played it and yet you have played Red Dead Redemption 2, you may feel like this game doesn't feel quite as alive as Red Dead 2 does, which is testament to just how crazy they've started to push the open world, because GTA 5 feels more alive than 95% of open worlds, and yet Red Dead 2 makes it feel antiquated because that game is just filled to the brim with madness. So heaven help game developers once GTA 6 comes out and it's just reinvented what you can do with open worlds once again, because again, the game designers at Rockstar are fantastic, but they're also supported to the hilt with just an endless supply of money. No other game studio could do these titles. They just can't. There's no money in the world for it.
No.
It's just not enough. You need that giant franchise to be able to push these sort of things forward. And I look forward to seeing what they do, because it tends to be at the trend for years to come, tend to come from these titles. Gameplay innovations will usually come from a GTA game because they have the money to experiment with it. And God bless them for doing it. God bless this game. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful experience. It's definitely one somebody should play and enjoy. It's got a fantastic story. It's very well written. There's a lot of humor in it. There's actually a lot of pathos in it as well. And there's a big focus on bank robberies in this game, which I love. And they're very enjoyable to play. The bank heists in this game are fantastic. Better than anything in Payday. And that game's all about robbing banks. So, that's even more testament to it here. And if you do just want to, as you said, jump in, go shopping, go eat some crap takeaway food, listen to the radio and play a round of golf, this is probably better than most games for that as well. It's probably better than real life. So, it's all there.
I think that's a fair tagline to leave it on. Yeah, GTA 5 probably better than real life. I've given this a 9 out of 10 on the sheet. I think it's fantastic stuff.
I gave it a 9 as well. It's a very good game, well worth playing if somehow you have not already. Okay, let's just flag up some of the coming soon titles which are coming to Game Pass. We had a new batch of games announced this past week. As you listen to this, you will have NHL 21 available as part of EA Play. That dropped on the service today, Monday, 12th of April. But in 3 days' time, April 15th, you will also be able to get the charming-looking indie game Rain on Your Parade, which kind of looks a little bit like Donut County, but with a rain cloud. That's the pitch that works for me. And of course, as we mentioned on last week's show, MLB The Show 21, day one into Game Pass, April 20th, just a week to wait. until that one comes out. So some cool little titles coming to Game Pass this week. Which one catches your eye? We kind of already knew about NHL and MLB. So basically, I'm saying, how excited are you to play as a Cloud?
I'm pretty excited to play as a Cloud. I mean, it looks, like you said, it looks like Donut County, but a Cloud. I mean, that's fine. That works for me. I'm hoping it's the kind of game that's not going to outstay its welcome. It looks like it won't. They say on the description of it that it has over 50 levels, which probably means in the range of, 50-ish levels, which is good. Yeah, this will be a good little thing to play through. Hopefully a nice, easy completion for the sheet. So I'm looking forward to it.
When you find out those 50 levels take an hour each to complete, I'll look forward to your smile turning very much upside down as rain on your parade rains completely on your parade. It would be very fitting were it to be a enormously, obnoxiously long video game when we clearly think it's going to take us all the 3 hours to beat. But I am looking forward to this game, even though I do expect it to piss all over me.
Yeah, I mean, now that you've said that, I do feel like the name is just entirely designed to just be a pun on how horrible it's going to be for us. So that'll be nice. But yeah, lots of good stuff coming up. Great stuff for sports fans in particular. So exciting times.
Okay, let's move on to our leaving soon titles. Now, these games are leaving on the 15th of April. We've got 3 titles leaving Xbox Game Pass itself. We also have a bunch of EA Sports titles leaving, but they're all old Madden and NHL games, so I don't think anybody needs to worry about them unless you're desperate to play 7-year-old Madden for absolutely no reason. I think that's fair to say, right?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, you're looking at, I think there's 2 very old NHL games and about 5 old Maddens. The only thing to note to people is that you'll see that Madden 25 is leaving. That is a game from about 6 years ago. That's not Madden from 3 years in the future. So don't be alarmed. It's not a new game. But yeah, I mean, I'm still baffled by the fact they chose that name. I don't know why you wouldn't look 10 years in the future and say we're going to need Madden 25 for then. It's just nonsense. But yeah, nothing of value is lost. You can still play the latest versions of all of those sports.
But the Game Pass titles which are leaving are Deliver Us the Moon, Gato Roboto, and Wargroove. Now, we covered both Deliver Us the Moon and Gato Roboto on last week's show. It's fair to say we both like Gato Roboto a heck of a lot. That's a good game. That's a good cat game. Deliver Us the Moon's all right. It's perfectly playable. You've still got time to beat it. It's like 4 hours long. You could do it. But, I don't necessarily think you have to.
Yeah, I agree with that. Deliver Us the Moon is fine. You're not going to hate your time with it, but you're not going to regret missing out on it either. Whereas Gato Roboto is a really fun game and only takes a few hours. So that's one we definitely recommend you try and get through.
Instead, though, this week we have been picking up our Nintendo Switches because we both own the next title on Switch. So it's nice just to pick it up to give it a play for once. It's a little bit of Wargroove. Now, this is a Advanced Wars type game. Now, if you've not played an Advanced Wars game before, you absolutely should. Those games are great. Go pick them up on Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. Fantastic titles. But they are essentially turn-based strategy games where you command an army of units and you need to kill either a commander or capture a base or whatever win condition the map has for you on that go. This is a homage to those titles with a few new tweaks to kind of vary up the formula. But since Nintendo have seemingly decided they don't want to make any Advanced Wars games, I think it's fair rights that Chucklefish, the developers of this game, have managed to come in, swoop in, and actually deliver us the Advanced War games fans of the franchise like me have been waiting a long time for.
Yeah, I was very, very excited a few years ago when I first saw preview footage of this game because, it just looks like Advance Wars. And yeah, fair play to Chucklefish. We've waited way too long for Nintendo to revive the Advance Wars series. It was always really successful. It sold well. They were always received really well, critically acclaimed. The issue was that the company that makes them is now the people making the Fire Emblem games, which has blown up to a massive degree in the last kind of decade. So they just don't have the capacity to give them Advance Wars anymore. But in light of that not happening, I love that this exists. It's basically taken that Advance Wars gameplay, that Advance Wars flavor, and kind of chucking a bit of fantasy in there. Rather than tanks and bomber planes and fighter jets, this is like dragons and a bit of magicians and stuff like that. But the core gameplay is there, and it's the same as you remember it, which is as it should be.
Absolutely. So let's kind of talk briefly about the story of Wargroove. It's not exactly a magnum opus. It does the job, is what I would say. You essentially play as a young commander whose father is killed in the very opening mission of the game. So it's not a spoiler. And they are going across their world trying to gain support from different factions who have a horrible habit of trying to kill them, despite nobody in the world of Wargroove wants to talk to somebody before they try to kill them. I kind of like that. I think that's kind of funny. And she's going across the world to try to build an army to take on a bunch of vampires, mystical swords. It's all going on. It's all there for you to enjoy. It's perfectly playable. It moves the story along, but certainly no one's going to be sat here going, I can't wait to find out what happens next in Wargroove.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, the story's there as an excuse to show you all these different commanders and all these different armies and factions. And then, you know, as the game goes on, you'll get to play as some of them. You'll unlock them to be used in arcade mode. So you can use different kind of hero characters in there. And, you know, that's the main point of it. You know, you just go around and yeah, gather support and as you said, beat up some bad vampire people. So it's fine. It does the job. The main reason to play this game is always going to be for the strategy kind of battles. But that was the same with Advance Wars too. To be fair, you know, you didn't play in Advance Wars for the story. You just played it for the fun battles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose Advanced Wars had these wonderfully charismatic commanders as well,
Yeah.
which you enjoyed on like a personal level. They always had funny little traits to them. And Wargroove does that as well. And that's actually where its strength comes from. The story itself may not be fantastic, but the writing of the characters and the commanders themselves, I actually quite like. I think there's quite a lot of cool different variety in people here. They all have their own traits. It'll raise a little chuckle occasionally with some ridiculous dialogue. One of the commanders is a dog, and I absolutely adore that. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. When he's surrounded by these two artillery people, essentially, who support him in battle, who just adore him. And their cheeks are bright red, and they're in love with this majestic hound because, of course, they are. He's gorgeous, and you want him to win. And he's my favorite character, almost in all of gaming. I just think he's brilliant. Love that dog.
He is great. The dog is fantastic. He's got a little helmet on because he's going to war, so he needs his helmet. And yeah, he's just a fantastic little commander. He's a good boy. And I love that his because all the commanders have like these special moves and special skills. I like that his is literally just that he just goes up to people and just like howls. And then that inspires the units around him to get another turn because he's just such a cute dog that they're like, I'm going to go and fucking kick some ass now because this dog's adorable. Like, yeah, he's definitely the best commander.
Absolutely. He's hidden away mainly in the side missions because this game does work in a main mission structure with a few side quests dotted about. So if you do want to get your dog times, do play the side content. There's actually some fun variation on win scenarios in those side missions, which is quite fun, actually. It just varies up the formula a little bit because Wargroove at its very core will boil down to just do two things. You either kill the opposing commander or defeat them in battle. You don't really kill anybody in this game. Yeah. Or you destroy their base via trebuchets or storm at them with horses. Whatever you want to do, bring it down and you'll win that way. Most of the battles do descend into that. Is that perhaps a little bit boring by the time you get to your 10th, 15th hour of Wargroove, do you think?
I mean, I think it's a bit tricky with Wargroove because the issue is that, so if you look at Advance Wars was always about Advance Wars was almost always about destroying the enemy base to win the map. And then you'd have the odd mission where, you know, both sides would just have limited units and you just have to beat all the units to win. But they didn't have this thing with the commander where you could beat the commander to win the level. And I think that can sometimes be Wargroove's downfall, to be honest, because when I was playing through this campaign, I played on the default difficulty, which the game calls hard, but from what I can tell from the difficulty options, they just change like the damage you do and the the damage you take and stuff like that. So the enemy AI is probably the same. And I found that as I went through this campaign, most of the missions where it's defeat the commander or destroy the base, usually it just boils down to me waiting long enough for the enemy commander to do a really stupid decision that puts them exposed and out in the open, and then I can just ambush them and kill them. And, you know, in a game that's based on Advance Wars, which is so meticulous about its strategy, even though I was glad, you know, because we have to beat all these games and get through everything in Game Pass and we're in a hurry. So I'm happy to beat the level quickly. It was still a little disheartening when I'd pick up a cheap win because the enemy commander had just like got way too aggressive and ran right at me to kill someone. You know, I don't know. I think it misses the mark a bit with that. But other than that, I don't mind it. I don't mind that there's like limited options for how to win levels, because realistically, in the campaign for this game, they actually spend most of the campaign teaching you, which is a bit strange. Like, if you don't play the side missions, that is, if you just do the main missions, there's like 7 chapters, and they kind of finished teaching you about the game in chapter 6. Like, at that point, they're still teaching you, like, about like, they only introduce like sea, like units that are on the sea in chapter 6, and then that's like the final lesson you learn. So even though the strategy and the thing is always destroy the enemy base, as you go through this campaign, they are constantly introducing new unit types to you and new styles of playing the game. So I think it stays fairly fresh, but I would have preferred if the AI was just a little sharper.
Yeah, it is a slight problem. It's also conversely, because defeating the commander is how you can win, it's also how you can lose. And it is quite simple to find yourself in a position where you make one wrong move with your commander and then they're just blown to heck in the very next turn, which is somewhat frustrating because these are also the ones who can turn the tide of battle. And a lot of the time I find myself dropping them back so that they don't take too much damage, which is perhaps a little bit counterintuitive. You want them changing the tide of battle, whereas instead I'm kind of having them just not get too involved, pick off the odd straggler, because if I send them too far forward, they'll be dead in a turn or two. And that's a bit of a shame, but at the same time, that's strategy games. You can't go too gun-ho all the time. Occasionally you do have to temper your strategy and your attacks. And Wargroove does do a good job of punishing you if you're too aggressive, punishing you if you're too cautious. If you just stand around your base doing nothing, you're just not going to capture any buildings. You're going to have no money and you're going to lose eventually. So, it's definitely trying to get you on the front foot. But you do have to think about what you're doing. I appreciate that. I think it's a good strategy game on the whole. Certain unit types are more useless than others. A wagon is deceptively the best thing you can buy in the game, which I always find strange considering it can't actually shoot anything, but it can move people around that map pretty quickly. So that's always a bit odd when the non-offensive unit is the most useful one at the title. But there's a lot to like it. There's a lot I do enjoy about it. It captures that advanced wars feel, right down to how when you enter into battle, the screen splits and your units charge at the opposing team and you damage so much and then they'll counter-attack. It captures the flow, it captures the spirit. The pixel style is even similar. There's a lot to like here for fans of that franchise. They've definitely done a good job of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's, if you've ever been a fan of the Advance Wars series, there's no reason to not buy this game. Frankly, it's not even a case of rush through it in Game Pass. You really should own it because it's the best. It's the best like way to play a new Advance Wars game that we have right now. There's not been an Advance Wars in, it's got to be a decade, if not longer now. It will be longer, probably, actually. So, it's well worth picking up. It's a lot of fun. It's got a good variety of modes as well, which I quite liked. You've got the campaign, and that comes with, as you said, fun side missions where you get to play as the dog, which obviously fantastic. But then you've also got a straight up arcade mode where you pick a hero and you have to go through like consecutive battles and try and like survive them to win win stars. And then they've also got a puzzle mode where they put you in like a predetermined situation and you have to figure out the exact right way to position the units to like win on that turn and stuff. And those are pretty good. They kind of take a little bit of thinking to figure them out, and they kind of teach you more about the game as you do it. So yeah, I don't know. I think this is a good package overall. And I think if you are someone who would enjoy this type of game, it's one to buy. You don't want to rush through this.
Yeah, big fan of the arcade mode. Love the puzzle mode. Love kind of working out where best to place units and who to take out first to get those one-turn victories. And it is probably, in many ways, a better tutorial than the actual game gives you, because you really do learn how to use critical hits effectively and what each unit can bring to each battle. I'd also mentioned there's a fantastic customization and map editor in this game as well. People have recreated Advanced Wars within Wargroove. They've just made those games again in these maps. And that's really cool. You can do all of that. There's loads of downloadable maps to play through, loads you can make yourself. So there's a lot of content here by the time you're finished. There's a load of characters to play as in the arcade mode. There must be the best part of 16 to 18 characters you can play as here, all with their own unique style. So there's loads of content. So if, are you going to be able to get through this game by the 15th, 16th of April? No, you're not going to do it. That's probably not going to happen. You're looking at a 15 to 18 hour campaign if you're playing a lot of the side stuff. But is this a game you should probably think about owning? I'd say yes, although I wouldn't say on the Xbox. I think this is a game so suited to handheld gaming. I have yet to. I played this for about 30 minutes on my TV before it was annoying me that it was on my TV. And I pulled it out of the dock and started playing handheld again. It's just so suited to handheld play while some crap's on in the background or and commute to work or whatever else. So if you do have a Nintendo Switch, you should really be holding out for a Wargroove sale and picking it up on that, because I think this game is made for handheld gaming.
Yeah, it's made for handheld, and it's even more so it's made for the Switch as well, because I played this on the Switch, but I played kind of half on the TV and half on the handheld. And the game kind of knew you were going to do that, to the point where you actually get completely different camera angles of the action depending on if you play on TV or on handheld. Like the game takes place on a zoomed in view if you're using the handheld screen, because you need to see, obviously you're on a smaller screen, you need more detail. But then if you're on a big TV, it just zooms out to show you the whole battlefield, because you can pick up on all the details whilst also seeing the whole area. So I love that. I think that's great great planning ahead to think that through and put that in. I mean, I would at this point use the Xbox, use the time it's left in Game Pass as a way to just treat it as a demo, frankly. If you're on the fence about buying this and you do have a Switch, I'd say just download the Game Pass game. It's a small download, and just throw an hour at it. And if it takes your fancy, I would then just go to the Switch and buy it there instead, because it's not the kind of game you want to always be locked onto the TV with.
No, you want to take the time to enjoy it properly. I'll quickly mention that the difficulty of the title, I found it pretty tough on the default difficulty. It's pretty unforgiving. Clearly, the devs at Chucklefish heard that, because the difficulty system in this game got a massive overhaul in a later update to actually add in the medium, easy, and almost pitifully easy difficulty modes, which you can do. You can also make it significantly harder if you're a massive sadist by adjusting those sliders in terms of money, resource, and damage taken to as high or as low as you wish them to be. All that it does is affect the star rating you'll get at the end of each level. That's okay. That's pretty cool. They also added in a checkpoint system, which I massively appreciate, because a lot of these games, the opening 10 minutes of a map is kind of setting up where you're gonna capture buildings, you're gonna build certain units, and then you're gonna start moving into actually trying to win the map. And if you lose and you have to do all of that again, it's a little bit soul destroying. So do make good use of the checkpoint system. You're only allowed one per map. It overwrites it the minute you save another one. But if you make one after you've captured a few buildings around you, it just speeds up that kind of early game tutorial base building up section as well. So they've done a lot to streamline it since its release as well.
Yeah, they have. And I think that's something that, everyone should really look to, other kind of studios of similar sizes. Chucklefish was so reactive with this game in improving it for people. I mean, I played this the day it came out because I was really excited about it. And it had issues, man. As you said, there was no checkpoints. The difficulty was locked to being very difficult. They had issues with because obviously, you see a lot of these cutscenes where the troops are fighting each other. And when the game first came out, your only options were to either watch them all completely without being able to skip them, or turn them off completely and not have any of them. And players kind of came back quite quickly and said, we'd like to be able to press a button to skip them, but still have them turned on, because you want that kind of, the game's a bit lifeless if you turn them all off, basically. And Chucklefish came straight back, added in an option to skip them optionally, added in the checkpoints, the difficulty changes. Like that's really great to see. They're worth supporting for that. They'll put a game out, but they'll make sure it's what the players want it to be before they move on. So love that. Love the studio, and just really glad to see Advance Wars style games coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Look, if you're a fan of strategy games, I'd recommend you give Wargroove a try. I think you'll get a lot out of it. If you're not, this is probably a more careful introduction to the genre than most strategy games are. I'm not a massive strategy lover yet. I do quite like these games. So maybe you'll find that you do get more out of this one than you would say an XCOM, or, or even more hardcore strategy game like a Civilization, or whatever kind of strategy title you want to pick. This is a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more for the casual kind of strategy fan audience. But I'd recommend people give this a go. I think this is a damn good game. I've not quite finished it. I've got about a mission or a campaign or two to go. But I'm tracking towards a 7, maybe even an 8 for this game. I think it's very good. I think it achieves pretty much everything it sets out to. And I'd be very interested in playing the sequel to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I gave this a 7. I did manage to finish up the story in this one just yesterday, and it's really good. Like the only reason I can't give it an 8 is I do think, as I said earlier, the problems with the AI when you kind of pick up cheap wins, it just feels like it devalues the odd level. You've worked really hard to achieve a victory, and then the AI kind of puts it on a plate for you, and that can be a little bit disappointing at times. But other than that, it's a really solid, replication of what Advance Wars was and why it was so good. And I agree as well. I would love to see a sequel. That's what I want to see, because I think they'll iron out any issues people had with this one, and they'll just make something fantastic. So, yeah, 7 out of 10, well worth checking out.
Okay, let's move on to our oft-recurring feature. What are we EA playing this week? But this is no cause for celebration, because there is no joy to be found in the EA Play experience from this past week. It is time to abandon all hope. It is time to batten down the hatches. So it has finally come to this, an Unravel double bill. God help us all.
Yeah, it had to be done. This is on you, really. It's as much as you hate it. You just kept playing Unravel for some reason. You came on the show, you said Unravel was awful and you hated it, and then I'd check my Xbox friends list, and there's Josh playing Unravel. So here we are. This is what had to be done.
The stench of quick completion was all around Unravel. Unfortunately, it has many other stenches which permeate perhaps even more than its completion time. It's a fairly miserable experience, but we've played them both, so we might as well review them. We might as well tell you that they're not very good. And maybe, shock and spoilers, some of us are more deranged and mad than me, basically, and have managed to find some joy in the Unravel franchise, because clearly he's a broken man. But let's start with the first game, Unravel. This is a 2D platforming game with a lot of puzzle elements where you control a character called Yanni, who is a ball of yarn, and he's trying to bring back the happy memories of some old woman's life and via living through photo books and doing a bunch of crap puzzles. Good for you, Yanni.
Yeah, welcome to indie games from about 7 years ago. Random emotional story that doesn't really work, and then off goes Yanni to just look back on some happy memories of old people for no reason. And along the way, he'll be constantly attached to everything behind him because he's yarn, and that annoys you at every turn. And you literally just you go through frankly too many levels. And you just have to basically that's it. You're just yarn guy. All you do is just attach the yarn to certain walls and then bounce up to different areas to get further ahead. And sometimes you run out of yarn, and that's really frustrating. So you have to backtrack and find some random magical ball of yarn that just so happened to get left there. And then you proceed ahead. Like there's really nothing else this game does. It's just that you just connect your yarn to points and occasionally push a rock. And that's it. It's incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, I should mention as well, just for the indie checklist fans over there shouting at me, but Josh, did somebody die? Of course somebody died. It's an indie game for the mid-noughties. What do you mean, did somebody die? Of course they died. Christ. So yes, there is a death, just in case you were wondering. But as Andrew mentioned, the yarn dude who you play as through most of this experience, you'll find when you play the first level of Unravel, if you're anything like me, you'll go, Christ, this game looks kind of gorgeous. The environments and the scenery feels almost lifelike. Most of it is set place in some form of nature. So you're amongst the stones and the woods or the lakes or wherever crap position they found you this time. And it looks really nice. It looks gorgeous. You'll throw out your yarn lasso and you'll swing through the trees. And you'll think, okay, this is kind of fun. There's some twitchy kind of platforming going on here. I feel like some form of yarn Tarzan going through the trees. That's really cool. And then, as you kind of mentioned, you'll come to a juddering halt when your yarn just runs out and you can no longer go anywhere. And you have to track back to find either a ball of yarn magically left or figure out which yarn stick you went over the wrong way, because the game hates it when you try to take a slightly creative way to get through the level. They hate that. They loathe it completely. There's one way to complete levels in Unravel, and you will do it that way, or the devs at Unravel will be very, very upset with you. The short amount of yarn you have is the worst part of this game. every time I saw those knots start to appear and I realized he was running out of yarn, I almost wanted to cry because I knew it meant I'd done something wrong and I had to unyarn myself to get back and try it a different way. Often I'd done the right thing, but I just didn't do it straight away. I went over one log too early or something like that, and that was enough to yarn him out. And good God, that sucks.
Yeah, that's incredibly tedious. And in addition to that as well, this game has a real problem with because you tie these knots, as we said, to make bridges or make like areas you can bounce off, but the game insists on those being done in a very specific way. And like, you'll have times where you'll tie two knots to an area to make a bridge, and it won't make a bridge, but then you'll untie the knots and swap the order you put them down in, and the game will be like, oh yeah, that's fine, that can be a bridge. And it's like, logically that would have been the same, but it just doesn't work because they just decided you had to do it their exact way. It's miserable. It's a miserable experience. And as this game goes on, you spend the vast majority of your time not doing anything fun. It's like you said, Josh, early levels, you're doing quite a lot of jumping and you're doing a bit of Tarzan action, and you kind of feel like this is going to be a platformer with some kind of rope swinging stuff, and then also the odd puzzle. And then it quickly becomes apparent by like level 2 that this is just a slow, tedious puzzle game, and occasionally you'll jump over a gap. That's all this is. It's really rough to get through. And another huge issue I had actually with Unravel that led to me having multiple times where I'd look at a walkthrough for this game, and then I'd watch the video and just face palm myself at how stupid I felt, but I actually think it's the game's fault, is that there'll be scenery all around this world. As we said, the world looks lovely, really lifelike, it's beautiful. But all of the scenery, whether it's interactable or whether it's in the background, looks completely the same. So you'll have times where like I can't possibly figure out what to do. And then I'll watch a walkthrough video and I'll see that like a rock that looks the same as every other rock in the game that were all in the background, this one's actually in the foreground and you can push it to solve a puzzle. And I literally couldn't tell it apart from all the ones that were in the background. And then I had another time where I jumped up a kind of tunnel and I was like, I could see something off to the left, but there was a wall in the way. And I was like, well, I can't go there. There's a wall in the way. And then I watched the video and it turns out that wall's in the background and I just had to jump to the left. And I was stuck for like 5 minutes just staring at this wall because it looked like it was in the way. Like that's just really, that's poor, man. You've got to be more careful with highlighting what's actually in the way of the player and is interactable. And they fail to do that here.
That happens all the time. You'll frequently find yourself thinking, what am I meant to do? And just not realize you were just meant to pull a stone onto a bridge like you've done 500 times, but this stone was very well hidden or would look like it was part of the background. And that's incredibly frustrating. It's incredibly dull. The puzzles themselves, you get the odd brain scratcher, which is quite enjoyable, but on the whole, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's the same mechanic. It's usually create a bridge, get up to it, and then swing across. You're endlessly tying yarn to different places. That's all you're really going to do. Unravel occasionally teases these cool set pieces where you might get caught up in a bag, or a bird might start carrying you somewhere, and you think, oh, cool, this is something different. And then it'll drop you 2 seconds later into another crap puzzle, and your heart will just sink with despondency that it's happened to you again. It's just fairly infuriating. And a lot of people, when I read reviews of this game, they reviewed pretty well because it's an indie game in the mid-noughties, and therefore it is guaranteed a 7 out of 10 from critics. A lot of people praised the music in this game as being really fantastic. God, it annoyed me.
Oh, I found it so irritating.
It's so irritating. This is like your Narita Boy dance moves. To me, it was just every single sea shanty almost tune which was blaring out of this miserable title, and it sounds the same. Even when it was a different song, I thought it was the same song. It would just loop and loop and loop, and it just gets into your skull.
Yeah, man, it was trying too hard to be emotional. Basically, I found, like the game is just a pretty standard puzzle game about a yarn guy walking through some nature, and then you just had this insanely loud music with often with violins that would just spike right above the volume levels of everything else, and it was just sharp and frustrating and annoying, and I hated listening to it. I really did. And I could tell that, I don't know, I just got the impression, and as you said, the critics kind of show that as well, that everyone was really proud of what they'd done with this music in this game. And I don't know, I almost found it smarmy how the game just thought it was so sweet and emotional. I was like, I don't care about anything you're doing, Yanni, your stupid indie emotional story that doesn't really have anything in it. It's just, I don't know. Maybe we've just played too much of this at this point. It's just miserable, and I've seen too much of this type of indie game. And thankfully, it looks like we've moved away from this. You don't get a lot of these kind of games now, but there was an era where it was just every game was this, and I'm glad we've passed that now.
And the story is just full sentimentality at its very worst. It's sickeningly saccharine. It's desperately trying to make you sad that somebody had a life where they had a family and they went on wonderful adventures and had a long, happy marriage, and then he died. I mean, this is just life. This isn't sad.
Yeah.
This just happens. It sounds to me like they had a pretty decent time together. To be fair, it wasn't that bad. I mean, they had everything most people want from life: a wonderful existence in a gorgeous part of the world, sharing adventures with your loved ones. Why am I meant to feel sad? Why have all the pictures faded out? That doesn't make any sense. Why is he obsessed with knitting all of a sudden? Why is it a yarn guy who's bringing this all back together? How come the ending is just nothing really changed and all I did was pointless? It didn't really matter. And as you mentioned, this game just goes on way too long. Yeah. Like, I looked at the achievement list for this and it seemed like it was going to be over in 8 levels, but they actually snuck some achievements under different headings, which actually extends it by about 5 levels. And my God, it is miserable by the time you finish. You just want this game to stop. I just screamed at Unravel, please, will you stop? I can't take you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's some games that we play in this challenge that when I finish them, I kind of have a bit of a moment where I have to contemplate if I still like games, because I just, I've had such a miserable time that there's a part of my head just going, well, just stop doing it now. You don't want to do this. And Unravel was one of those games. I finished it and I was just like, because I really wanted to get it done with. I think I'd reached about 5 levels in, which I thought was near the end, but actually was only halfway. And I just made myself grind out the other half of the game in one sitting. And yeah, I mean, I love games, but this game makes me think I don't. So that's about as damning as an indictment I can give it. Yeah, I mean, I gave this a 3 on the sheet, and it is a game that I would say nobody should inflict upon themselves. Like, it's just not, there's no logical reason to play Unravel.
Yeah, I mean, I've played worse games than Unravel, but I don't know if I've played many I dislike as much as Unravel. Everything about this game annoys me. Everything about this game bores me. And everything about this game makes me want to not play it. The reason I kept dipping into it was I would literally play 5 minutes of Unravel and then physically not be able to play anymore. And I got stuck on a puzzle in about episode 3 of it, where I just couldn't get a stupid log to move up a ledge. And I started to cry. I just couldn't keep trying it. I'd do a puzzle, finish it, and think, okay, let's crack on. And then I get to another crap puzzle I couldn't do because the mechanics were too janky. And I'd start, the tears would form once more in the corners of my eyes. I gave Unravel a 3 out of 10. I think I'm being kind. I probably like this game significantly less than 3 out of 10, but it does look gorgeous. Yeah. And when you are Tarzaning, occasionally fun can be had. But by God, this is about as miserable as I've ever been. So naturally, the very first thing I did after I finished Unravel was boot up Unravel 2.
Same.
Because when you're in a miserable frame of mind, you might as well just jump straight into it. Now, Unravel 2 kind of ditches the solo experience for a co-op one. This game you play as 2 Yarnies, multiple Yarnies. They've bred. Somehow there's more of them. They've discovered reproductive organs, which is a terrifying thought. And now there's loads of them. And they're all about, and they're helping solve some mystery with some kids. And I'm not entirely certain what the story of Unravel 2 is. I have no idea what happened, but something.
The best I could get from what happened in Unravel 2 is there was 2 kids, and there was an angry man who looked like he was drunk because he was stumbling around. And throughout most of the levels, he just really, really fancied doing some child abuse. Like, he was desperate. He was desperate to just catch them and get them. And you weren't helping them because you're just some yarn at the front of the screen. You're just seeing these weird kind of flashback memories of them. But like, I think they escaped from him, and that's nice. That's all I can tell you. I've got nothing else on what happens in Unravel 2. Just like Unravel 1, it's a pointless attempt to make a story out of a game that probably didn't need a story. Why couldn't this just be a game about some yarn that has came to life and is just out on a like a little adventure? Why did it need this heavy-handed background story? It's completely irrelevant.
Oh, because it's an indie game. Yeah. But nonetheless, as you mentioned, all of that happens. All of it is inconsequential because all you're really doing in Unravel 2 is a co-op platforming game. This is
Yeah.
much more platformy than Unravel 1 is. And if you're anything like me, you will thank God that Unravel 2 is bored of the puzzles of Unravel, because even Unravel 2 found Unravel boring. And this game kind of focuses a lot more on momentum-based co-op platforming puzzles where you'll swing somebody to the other side, pull them up a rope, pull them up the yarn to get them onto the ledge. And it's significantly more enjoyable than Unravel is. It maintains the same gorgeous art style. It has the same annoying music. But, the momentum platforming, which I almost was liking in Unravel, is much more at the forefront of Unravel 2. So this is by far the better Unravel experience. Though saying something is a better Unravel experience is saying very, very little.
See, that's it though. I'd go further because I genuinely think Unravel 2 is a good experience. Like, I think the platforming is greatly improved, and obviously, as you said, the focus of this game is just a platformer now. So like, you're doing a lot of swinging around on the ropes and stuff, and it feels better. Like, there's a real flow to it. Sometimes if you kind of swing off on these ropes at the best time and do a jump, you can feel that jump, like you can feel the inertia of it. And I love that. That's kind of the stuff that only, the best platformers manage to do. So they achieved that, which is great. I love that they just got rid of this idea of the yarn being like, you're not attached to yarn behind you in this game at all. None of that's here. You don't run out of yarn. The whole game is based on the fact that the two lead characters are always connected by yarn. So like, you're just using that fact to get around puzzles. You'll put one of them on each side of a rock, and then they can use the leverage now to swing because the yarn is kind of around it. That's really cool. Love that. And I also think as well that, this is, it's clearly a co-op game. There's two yarn guys, and you can do all the puzzles together. But it also manages to be a really effective single player game, like better than it should have managed to. Like, I think because you can hold in a button to make the two yarn people sort of connect into being one person at any time. So when you're just trying to get through an area or do some platforming, you can just do that and move ahead. And then when you're actually solving the puzzles, it's just a tap of a button to switch between them. So it's really easy to just put, yarn number one in the right position and then change to the second one and start swinging around solving puzzles. So I think they've done really well to throw away all of the thing, because it was probably quite a brave decision, to be fair, because Unravel, the entire concept of Unravel 1 was that yarn that was, holding you back at all times. And I like that they knew that was garbage and threw it away. That's really good. I wish they would have also thrown away the music and the need for a story that doesn't work. But nonetheless, looking past that, I just think this is a good little game. Tight platforming, fun, quick puzzles. Doesn't get bogged down in any sort of tedious stuff. And also, it's much shorter. There's only 7 levels in the main campaign, which is exactly as long as I wanted to play Unravel 2, pretty much. So, I don't know. I'm actually, this one turned me back around, which is difficult to do. I'm a miserable bastard, and I went into this miserable from just finishing Unravel 1, and I don't know. I left Unravel 2 liking it, which is quite an achievement.
I think this is an example of what psychologists would call Stockholm syndrome, where somebody was so miserable by Unravel 2 that Unravel 1 that the fact Unravel 2 showed any limits of kindness by not being obnoxiously awful made you believe that they were actually now a nice person. Unravel 2 is a perfectly cromulent platformer. It's fine. It plays okay. It's significantly better than Unravel, but Unravel was miserable. Unravel 2 is just fine. It's the mere fact that this game runs about 2 hours, and even then you said by the end of 2 hours you were getting bored of it, is kind of a sign that perhaps the core platform, it isn't that satisfying. Because if after 2 hours you're kind of getting fed up of it, it might be on its way out. The game is very repetitive. You do the first few puzzles in Unravel 2 with the momentum swing, and you'll do it for the next 7 levels, and it'll never really change. The only time it changes in the very last level where they give you a double jump, and that's actually a really fun sequence, which I wish they'd have brought in about 4 levels earlier, because it added quite a lot more momentum, I thought, to the actual platforming, which up until then had a bit of momentum but still felt quite flat. It really got some momentum the minute you gave it a double jump and some actual pace to its set pieces. The last level of Unravel 2, it's a damn good level. That's a good bit of video game, and I enjoyed that. But until then, I don't know. A lot of the problems of Unravel are still here. It's still a little clunky. You're still trying to swing out yarn to catch on to something, and you'll just miss. And then you have to set yourself back up again. and it'll take you 5 minutes to do it properly, and then you'll just miss, and you'll have to set yourself back up again. And that
I don't know, man. I didn't have any of that. I thought this game controlled really slick. I thought it controlled well. I didn't have any trouble. Like, 'cause I had a lot of trouble in Unravel 1 with that kind of stuff. Whereas in Unravel 2, I just didn't. I don't know. It's a strange one. I can see why we've came at this with a different opinion though, because if that was happening to me, I would be more down on this game. But I kind of breezed through this whole game without any real I didn't feel any resistance from the platforming or from any sort of awkward sections like that. So that's probably why we're feeling a bit different.
I think it's not just the resistance. I mean, I don't mind a platforming section which is awkward to pull off. I resent platforming sections where the answer is obvious and I have to do it 4 times to do it correctly. That's always frustrating. I don't mind tricky platforming sequences which require nimble button presses, but it didn't really. It's just been a bit of an arse with its yarn lasso. I was just a centimeter off and therefore it missed just obnoxiously every single time. Or I didn't have quite enough momentum despite the fact I was fine. I just pressed the jump button 2 seconds too early, and it's just niggly little things which irked me about the game. Maybe the fact as well that I constantly was not swapping the yarn people correctly. My head would just have, I've done this now, I can move. And then I'd move the wrong yarn dude. I mean, I'd have to go all the way back to the start of it to do it again because I accidentally pressed it and that killed me. But this is a much more enjoyable game than Unravel. It really is. There's actual set pieces here, which I like. They actually have cool little moments where you have to like avoid birds flying from the sky. That almost broke me in terms of annoyance, but at least it's a set piece, damn it. At least it's something different. We have to escape like a weasel almost in a tunnel which was trying to attack you. That was kind of cool. And then the aforementioned double jump section right at the end was really cool as well. You power up cars and drive cars about. There's a lot more stuff here in Unravel 2, which makes it a much more enjoyable experience. Unravel 2 comes out as ban average in my mind, which is probably quite an impressive achievement considering I think Unravel 1 is one of the most miserable experiences of my life. I played Unravel 2 and I went, okay, that was fine. That was okay. It's over. But I couldn't in any conscience say that this is a game people should play. I mean, if you've never played a platforming game before and you have never played a Mario game or a Sonic game or anything fun, if you're the kind of person who likes Balan Wonderworld, you may absolutely adore Unravel 2 because you'll be amazed that this kind of platforming can happen. But anybody who's played a lot of these over the past 25 years, like I have, will find nothing but a serviceable platformer, which does enough to hold my attention for 2 hours, which is a pretty low bar. Of a Midsummer Murders episode will hold my attention for 2 hours. It doesn't mean people should watch it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, man. I don't know. I disagree. I think, like I said, I think the platforming in this is actually really tight. I found controlling the 2 characters to be really slick and simple. Again, I didn't have the frustrations you had with it. I wasn't walking the wrong yarn man off a cliff and then having to redo sections again. But if I had done that, I'm sure I'd be pretty livid. But yeah, look, I just think it's a well put together game. And all right, fair enough. I said I kind of wanted it to end when it did, and it was only a couple hours long. But there's nothing wrong with knowing the limits of your game mechanics. We praised Gato Roboto last week for a similar thing. It made a really simple, your kind of compact Metroidvania style experience that finishes in a few hours and you enjoy all that time with it. So I've got no problem with it ending quickly. And yeah, I don't know. I found this game a satisfying game to just jump around in and figure stuff out because it was so quick and easy to sort of jump between the 2 yarn people and, set up some leverage to swing to a higher section or even just climb up the rope that connects you. Like, throwing away the logic of the initial game is the best decision they ever could have made, and I think they came out of this with actually a good game. So yeah, I've gave Unravel 2 a 7. I actually think if you want to play a 2D platformer with kind of hints of puzzle elements, then give this a shot. I think it's enjoyable.
I will remind any of our long-term viewers that is the same score Andrew gave Metal Gear Solid 5. So Unravel 2 is, I mean, you can't call it not a good game. Give it
not
7.
A good Metal Gear game.
But nonetheless. Yeah, no, but I gave this a 5. I think it's okay. I think the most damning indictment you can give Unravel 1 is that Unravel 2 throws away everything that Unravel does and comes out as a slightly more enjoyable experience. That's the final nail for me in Unravel's coffin. That that's even fair, if you throw all of its idiosyncrasies, it's a much more enjoyable experience.
I mean, while we're doing quick hit and runs on people's review history on this show, I would say that this is obviously a 2D platformer style game, and you can either trust me, who rightly sees that Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a fantastic game, or you can trust Josh, who thinks it's a 5. So take your pick.
I don't think it's a 5. I'd give it a 7.
Oh,
I haven't finished it though.
Yeah,
I don't like it. I don't think it's a good Ori game.
Yeah,
I think Ori and the Blind Forest, which I gave an 8 to, by the way, is a very enjoyable game. I think this is a worse Ori game, which to me is a 7, because an Ori game is still good. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the Blind Forest. But
yeah, that's actually something I can agree with. I do think this is like an Ori game but worse. That's actually something I can agree with. But yeah, fair enough.
If you want to hit me on my platform and opinions, I like every Sonic the Hedgehog game, even the bad ones. So hit me up if you think Sonic Heroes is an 8. Sonic Unleashed is a stone cold 9, and I like Sonic and the Secret Rings. God damn it! So
I was actually thinking about Sonic games recently, and I was thinking that do you remember in Sonic 06, which is probably the worst 3D Sonic game ever? They had one of the big problems was that it would give you 2 seconds of gameplay, and then it would load for 10 seconds, and a part of me was thinking, if that was backwards compatible on the Series X, I wonder if it would be fine now. Maybe Sonic 06 would be totally fine with the loaded improvements. Maybe
it'd be a lot more playable. I'm definitely up for giving that a go. Yeah. If that game is backwards compatible, I will definitely boot up some Sonic 06 and try and score it a 7 out of 10 just to drive people wild.
All we've really proved here is that when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, we're both broken people. But that's fine. Right then, so as always, we're going to close out this week's show with a bit of news, and we've got a couple of pretty big stories this week. First one being that E3 is returning this year, which is pretty fantastic news. I've always loved E3 in my time, so E3 is going to be back. It's going to be a digital only event this year, which obviously makes perfect sense, and it's going to be running from June 12th to June 15th, which is pretty much the standard time that E3 runs for. And the big news here is that we're going to be getting some proper press conferences, which are always the highlight of E3. I want to see those big 2-hour shows from Xbox, and a big Nintendo Direct with the next big stuff coming from them. And I'll sit through other shows from people like Ubisoft, even though I don't care. That's what I do on E3 week. And yeah, so back June 12th, June 15th, they've announced so far that confirmed to be at the show are Xbox, Nintendo, Capcom, Konami, who I assume are just doing pachinko machines, Ubisoft, Take-Two, Warner Brothers, and Koch Media. So decent lineup. There's no Sony, as you'd expect. Sony gave up on E3 long before it had any troubles, frankly. They checked out of E3 a long while ago. And also EA aren't there, but EA always just kind of bandwagon on to the front of E3 anyway. They just actually put their own show on at the start of E3, and we all know it's basically just E3. So they'll probably do that as well. But yeah, good news overall. Good to see this back.
It's nice to see it back. The only other big company missing is Square Enix. They have not announced themselves. They were doing a press conference for a little bit, but I guess they've been doing their updates on Just Cause Mobile direct to us in recent weeks. So yeah, that's perhaps we don't need them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Sony do their own press conference in and around the time as well, even if it's just another state of play where they tell us Deathloop's coming out again in a couple of months' time, because Lord knows that game's not had enough trailers. So yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it coming back. I'm looking forward to see what Xbox do. Their press conferences are always famously talking heady. So I'm looking forward to some more awkward Microsoft interactions where they all try to be cool on a big stage. That's always fun. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's a bit of a shame EA is not involved, because that's always the conference to hate on the most. But as you say, don't be surprised if they just turn up to pump out whatever dross they've got coming out in the next couple of weeks. Right at the start of the show.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I mean, I guess another thing to note here is, it's probably obvious, but obviously Bethesda isn't on this list. They are now a part of Microsoft and Xbox. So it kind of just confirms that Bethesda will obviously be on the Xbox show, which, to an extent you could see that coming, but they did used to have full press conferences of their own before. So, some people might have expected that. So yeah, it'd be good to see what's going on with them as well at the time.
Exciting to see what Konami come up with. What the heck are they there for?
Yeah, why are they showing up? I don't understand what they could be there for. They've pretty much abandoned all their franchises and all the key developers have largely left. I literally don't know what they could be doing. So
I mean, maybe they're gonna just get on stage, get one of the big suited execs up, and just bring out these cosplayed versions of their most famous franchises and just shoot them live on air, just as a final dirt, and a Solid Snake falls to the floor, blood pooling out of his head. His mouth opens up and coins pour out of it because he's become a pachinko machine before our very eyes. Something like that would be quite good.
Maybe they just get on stage and they go, right, well, we've been looking at the franchises we own and the development staff we still have, because obviously we lost quite a lot of developers, and we've decided to go in the direction of what they've made in the past and what they're famous for. So here's Metal Gear Survive 2, and that's all they've got. Just nothing else, just Metal Gear Survive 2. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll have something. Let's hope they have a reason to be there.
Oh, let's hope they don't. It'll be much funnier if they don't. It'll be much funnier if they turn up and they've turned their working staff into pachinko machines. It has some form of human-robot fusion. And this sort like a Neil Cicerigo album. I mean, goddamn, that's going to be fantastic.
That's fair. That does sound pretty good. But anyway, yeah, so moving on then. The only other story we got this week really is there was a really big report on just a lot of unrest at Sony and a kind of changing direction regarding their development teams. This came out of Bloomberg from Jason Schreier, who always does a lot of really good kind of investigative pieces. And yeah, I mean, things sound somewhat worrying at PlayStation at the moment, it has to be said. So I guess we'll try and run down the kind of big picture stuff here. But let's start it up by saying, for some reason, we're getting The Last of Us remake, even though that game came out on PS3 and got a PS4 remaster. So whatever reason, now we're going to get a PlayStation 5 version of The Last of Us. So sure. But the story behind that remake was that actually a small team in Sony was making that game. And basically Sony just rejected the entire concept of them making it, even though they've been working on it for quite a lot of time now, and said that they wanted Naughty Dog to make the remake. And that's kind of, not great. You probably don't want to be using Naughty Dog for a remake of a game they already made. They're largely the biggest, most important studio Sony has now. So that's kind of strange. And that obviously led to a lot of people working in that smaller studio, which sadly doesn't have a name. That studio kind of disbanded and a lot of the staff have left now. You've got the story we've already covered a few weeks ago out of Japan, where Sony restructured all their development in Japan around Team Asobi, who make Astrobot. And that led to a hell of a lot of people, again, leaving Sony development. They've lost a ton of developers who worked on games like Gravity Rush and Everybody's Golf. So, kind of middle level series for Sony, but still successful series that people love. So, yeah, they've lost a ton of talent there. And then there's also a story coming out of Sony Bend, who made Days Gone, which, Days Gone was a pretty mixed reviewed game. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But it was commercially successful. It sold well. And from what I've heard, it's now that it's had some updates, and it's also got a PS5 patch as well. And apparently it's a lot better now than it was at the start. So yeah, they'd apparently pitched to make a Days Gone 2. And Sony rejected that flat out because they said the first game wasn't received well enough. And then told them to make a new Uncharted with supervision from, of course, Naughty Dog. So that's, again, Sony's kind of insistence on just sticking with the big hitters they've already got, not really taking any chances on fresher franchises to see if they can, build them up to this level. And then apparently after that happened again, some of the top developers and lead developers at Sony Bend left the studio because they were unhappy with that direction. Apparently since then they've been taken off this Uncharted project and are now making their own game, but again they've lost developers since then. So just to you put those stories together, again, really good article over at Bloomberg on it, and it's a really worrying trend at Sony that kind of says to me that they're now so single-minded on series that are already blockbusters that I wonder if any, where are the next blockbusters going to come from Sony at this point? If this is the attitude, it's a worrying one.
Yeah, it's a very disconcerting story, isn't it? Really, because as I mentioned with the Japan studio news, I like Sony when it's a bit weirder, when it leans into its Japanese heritage, when it pulls out titles which aren't necessarily giant blockbusters but are interesting and unique. I want more knacks in the world. I want more Gravity Rushes in the world, because even if they aren't giant successes, they're at least something different. Yeah. And I think there's merit in that approach. Of course, people love the giant Sony big franchises. I think they're all perfectly good games. I love Uncharted. I think it's fantastic. I think The Last of Us is all right. God of War, that's okay. There's plenty of decent enough games there to look forward to and enjoy. But, you want to see chances be taken. You want to see new franchises come out. Something like A Days Gone. Well, at least they tried something new. At least it was something different. If Bend is making a new IP, then I'm kind of okay with there not being a sequel to Days Gone.
Yeah,
if
sure.
a new IP comes out and it's better. But I don't like the stories that we just put onto amalgamating teams to just make another Uncharted game. Like, just if you want to make another Uncharted game, just put one studio on it. I mean, the formula's there. You don't need 7 teams working on Uncharted. Christ, the formula's nailed down since the first game came out. It's a fantastic franchise. And the remake of The Last of Us just boggles my mind.
It's crazy.
I can't get even any logic into that decision. The Last of Us plays fantastically. It plays really well on PS3 and looks gorgeous on PS3. The HD remaster on the PS4 one, not even a HD remaster, just a upscaled power remaster, looked really good as well. Played really solid. I don't know what a remake does other than make it look better, because you're not going to change the systems. The systems are perfect as they are. The gameplay from The Last of Us to The Last of Us 2 did not jump that much. It was basically the same game. I don't see the merit of it.
No, I agree. And I think even more so as well, that, if you go for the angle of, for whatever reason, the decision is made that we really want this PS5 Last of Us remake, surely the idea of having a kind of smaller studio that are passionate about the project, having them on that would then be the right move. Like to kind of reject their work, which by the sounds of it was coming along quite, it'd been going for a while. They had a full section of the game that was playable in like a PS5 engine. Like to take that off them and then say you just want like, big boy Naughty Dog to do the remake instead, that just feels like the worst solution to this problem. Like, even though we don't need the remake, at least if it's just a small passionate team making it, then it's not kind of getting in the way of your big studios working on new exciting things. But to take it off them to just make Naughty Dog do it, I just don't know. I completely disagree with that direction. And there's no part of me that would, I don't have any desire to play what will effectively be the third version of The Last of Us 1 now. Like, it's too soon. We're not in 2030. It's only 2021 right now. It's not necessary in the slightest. I don't understand.
No, I can't see the benefit of it. It's almost entirely done, in my opinion at least, to tie in for the TV show, which will come out on HBO. They essentially want a game to launch alongside it, and it's much easier to remake the show the TV show is based on.
Yeah.
So you've said, watch the TV show, and here's the new game on PS5, pay 70 quid for it, because we're overcharging you for all our games at the moment, and have a good time. But it's made for no other audience than potentially the one who finds it through the TV show. I have the horrible feeling the Uncharted game will come out, will be heavily focused upon whatever the Tom Holland movie is that comes out from that. It seems to me like Sony's almost following its entertainment properties at the moment, rather than thinking in a game's first direction of what actually works. I don't want Naughty Dog wasting their time on a game they've already made. It's Naughty Dog, for Christ's sake. They should be putting out a new franchise now. The Last of Us 2, The Last of Us has nowhere to go. The series is done. It's dead as far as I'm concerned. It's a very good series, but it's done in 2 episodes. You move on. You make something new. That's what Naughty Dog has always done. From Crash to Jack, from Jack to Uncharted, from Uncharted to The Last of Us. It makes new franchises. It makes big hitters. Let them do that. Let them make your next big game for the PlayStation 5. You've got to trust in the creative team at one of the best studios in the world to do that. Not waste their resources on a TV show tie-in. Like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, it's crazy. That's it, isn't it? It's always just this insanely short-sighted decision making. Like if you made these decisions a decade or like 15 years ago, you don't have an Uncharted and a Last of Us to lean on now. They don't exist because you've left Naughty Dog making Jack 8. Like, you've got to let them move on and make new creative things that they're passionate about making. Like, I just don't know. I mean, hopefully this is just a blip and they kind of get back on track, but I don't know, man. I mean, it's the Japan stories in particular, the ones that worry me, because, Sony seem to be outright focused now on, like, they basically sound like they'll reject any game that they think is too focused on appealing to the Japanese audience. They want everything to be a massive global hit. And like you said, that kind of takes away the soul of Sony a lot. You don't get your Gravity Rushes, your The Last Guardians. I mean, even Everybody's Golf, that's I love that series. And, all those developers have left because, they insist on everything being this massive global global hit now, and that's just really disappointing. I mean, I love Team Asobi and I love Astrobot. Like honestly, the free, the game that came on the PS5 installed, Astro's Playroom, might have been my most fun I had on a game last year. I absolutely adored the few hours I spent with it, but I don't want you to close every other studio in Japan to support them with making more Astrobot. Like they're doing fine anyway. Like it's just not a sacrifice that's worth making. So yeah, I don't know. I think, over the next like 5 to 10 years, maybe a little longer, I think a lot of these people who have now left Sony will start to see some really cool independent games from Japan, from those creators. But they won't have the financial backing anymore to really push them up to the pinnacle, which is a real shame.
And that is the problem inside. And I know that Sony does have new franchises on the way. Obviously, the Returnal's launching in less than a month now. It's out here in a couple of weeks. But that game may be fantastic. Housemarque's a wonderful studio. It could be brilliant. But the problem Sony has with new IPs is that if you're charging $70, £70, God knows what in Australia, for these new IPs, then they're going to die on their feet. You need giant franchises to encourage people to ship out that kind of money. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Those reports this week that the Indian market is not buying many games. The pre-orders for new titles are very far down because they're being overcharged for them.
Yeah.
This encourages a lack of risk taking. This pricing structure encourages people to go for surefire hits. And I mean, we all know Returnal's going to flop. Of course it's going to flop.
It's a roguelike at £70. That won't work.
It's a small Swedish studio, a very talented studio, but most people have not played their games. And it's a new IP that nobody's heard of. It's going to flop.
Yeah.
And yet they'll use that as an excuse to have them make an additional Uncharted spin-off in a few years' time. And that to me is a bit of a worry. Say what you like about Microsoft, who have yet to release any games for their new console. So you're not off the hook, Spencer. You're nowhere near off the hook. But at the very least, they have a lot of studios doing a lot of different things, and they're definitely willing to take chances at the moment. And I respect more than I do.
That's it. Yeah.
Else.
That's absolutely it for me. As you said, we need to see the evidence coming from Microsoft. Obviously, it's not there yet, but all reports we're seeing from these studios that are now under the Xbox umbrella, it sounds like they all have a hell of a lot of freedom. They're free to kind of pursue the games they were already making before they got acquired, or to pursue new ideas if they want to. And that's really cool. Even stuff like, you look at the giant studio they made, The Initiative. I mean, they're making Perfect Dark, but that's going to be their own thing. That's not just going to be some, attempt to recapture what Perfect Dark was in the N64 days. It's certainly not going to be an attempt to recapture what it was in the Xbox 360 days. So, even that looks like it's going to be its own thing that they can make in whatever way they want. And that's really important. And yeah, I don't know. Sony look like they're just leaving that at the wayside now, which, they might be fine for the next 2 or 3 years. As you said, that Last of Us HBO show comes out and the Last of Us remake comes out at the same time and everyone buys it. It'll look nice then, but it won't look good in like 6 or 7 years' time when, everyone is done with The Last of Us and you're still trying to pump out like the 6th game in the series because you've not let anyone else make anything new.
It's a real shame. All of this adds up to me. All of this, from Sony to Microsoft, will always be a Western-focused console maker, to Nintendo, who just do the same games 8 times over. Sega, now is the time. The Dreamcast 2.
Yes.
The dream cannot die. The dream shall not die. Bring it back. Bring it back with Sonic Adventure 3 and just take all of my money, because you will become my favorite new games console manufacturer. Come back, Sega. Come back now.
Honestly, man, if Sega made a console now, I would find the space in my week to do a weekly podcast about that console. Like I would find the time because I would love that console. And they've even got enough games to make it work. Like, imagine if Yakuza was exclusive to that Sega console. That's already a big hitter. Like, they'd probably get Balan Wonderworld 2, grab that off Square Enix. That'd be awful, but we'd all laugh at it. It'd be fine. It'd be great.
Sign up Atlas for exclusive content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, please, all the old Sega sports franchises, bring them back. Bring Bizarre Creations from the deaf to do another Project Gotham racing game. Oh my God, the dream, man. The dream starts here. Sega, I know you're listening. Make it happen.
Yeah, grab get Soul Calibur back in house. Soul Calibur can be an exclusive. It's Virtua Tennis. Yeah. Let's do that. Let's do the Sega console. That would be the best move. Don't need any of this Sony stuff anymore. But anyway, on that note, that's There's probably a lot of us just really revering Sega and Sonic this week, actually, just completely off the cuff. That's been nice for everyone. But
Sega's the best, man. Sega's the best. What a company. Love
they
those
are
guys.
they are pretty great. But until that console gets announced, we won't be doing our Sega spin-off show just yet. So anyway, until next time, if you want to catch us on Twitter, you can find us at Beat the Sheet. If you want to drop us an email, you can find us at beatthesheetpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to follow us on our YouTube channel, we now post the episodes there as well. So the link for that will be in the show notes. But until next time, I'm Andy Wood, and I am now at 69% on the sheet. I think I'm about 3 games away from 70. So hoping to hit 70 next week.
Nice. And I am on 59% of the sheet. So close to 60%. But, who cares, man? This is all about Sega now. This is all that matters. This is all that matters. Write into your local MP. Just hit the streets. Just hit the streets and demand that it happens. Because Lord knows, after the year we've had, we deserve a Dreamcast 2. That's what we deserve.
Get me Sonic 06 2. Just name it that for some reason. It'll be great. Right, anyway, thanks a lot for listening this week, guys, and we will catch you next week.